Let's talk about the midterms then and dive right in because primary elections officially are underway starting this week. And we're seeing some messaging take place and take shape from Republicans and Democrats. What's working for both of them?
Well, it was interesting. We tested a series of messages from both the Democrats and the Republicans, and actually, I'll focus less on what the messages are because the messages will evolve, and people can look at them within our poll and our link at harvardharrispoll.com. But it's the effect that matters, right? And what we notice is that the Republican messaging is much more effective than the Democratic messaging. It moves the dial and it shifts the horse race from 50-50, a dead even, before being exposed to messages, to 51-49. So the GOP picks up 2 points relative to the Democrats after exposure to both the Democratic messaging and the Republican messaging in a randomized fashion. So, net net, Republican messaging is stronger than Democratic messaging at this stage heading into the midterms. Can it change? Absolutely. But as I mentioned, also the policy proposals that the administration brought to the table during the State of the Union give the Republicans even more traction over the span of the next 6, 7 months. And again, they have momentum, I would say, at this stage. The Republicans have momentum. Will it last? We don't know, but that's where the state of play is right now.
From the few elections we saw in November 2025, we saw two different types of Democratic messaging emerge. One was more focused on affordability, the other was more centered on countering President Trump. When you tested these amongst voters now, what's the more effective message?
Well, I would say that the United States still remains a centrist or perhaps on the aggregate center right country, right? And so Americans are overwhelmingly for free enterprise over socialist policies. And we tested that in our polling. And again, you have 76% support for free enterprise, and many of the policy proposals that, let's say, were anchor proposals in Zoran Mandami's campaign for New York City mayor, including, government-owned housing or government-run grocery stores. Those are not ideas that have a lot of traction with voters, including with significant chunks of the Democratic Party. So really, the U.S. still tends to prefer moderate politicians with moderate policy proposals. I think that's what's quite interesting for President Trump is that um, President Trump's issues and policy proposals are largely viewed to be at the center and viewed to be common sense. His rhetoric is viewed to be more center right and sometimes even farther still on the far right. And again, it's that rhetoric that gets in the way of those great proposals and potentially the administration having even better approval ratings with voters and better traction politically. And I think that that's a key takeaway from this poll, right? Focusing on why the administration wants to do what it wants to do, not just what they want to do, and explaining that further, and making sure that the policies speak for themselves and are not sidetracked by the rhetoric that's oftentimes attached to how they're brought to market or how they're brought to the voters.